What if I told you that chickens were some of the most abused animals on the planet? Let's be honest, you probably already know that. But what you may not know is that their abusers, the farmers who give them 1 square foot of room for their entire lives, who close out all sunlight from their enclosures, who feed them until they can't move, have less control than you would think. Chicken farmers often are forced to adopt abusive chicken raising practices by the corporations they work for. How can they be forced to do something like that? Today, I'll be discussing the background and structure of the American chicken industry, the relatively powerless position of the farmers working for that industry, and the punishments those farmers face for speaking or acting out against the wishes of their respective corporations, to shed some light on their experience in this animal abuse controversy. First, the background. The average American eats 84 pounds of chicken every year. For reference, that's twice as much as we ate 40 years ago. With the rise in industrial farming, the number of chickens in America has increased by more than 1,400%, and the number of poultry farmers has decreased by 98% in that time. In fact, the business has become so streamlined that only 4 massive corporations control more than 60% of the industry. Now, most poultry farmers work on a contract with one of these companies, which, while mutually beneficial at first, have since become oppressive for the farmers. For these companies to supply enough chicken to meet the country's demand and make sure they still make tons of money, they've had to cut some corners. And to do that, they've had to convince farmers to do some pretty awful things. For example, in industrial hatcheries, male chicks are discarded and ground up as soon as they can be identified as male, often on the same day they're born. This is because they do not get as fat as female chicks and cannot lay eggs, and so that would cost the chicken companies more money to raise to adulthood, for less money once the chicken is processed. So, a handful of chicken companies own most of the business and make huge profits off of it. That should mean more for everyone, right? Wrong. 71% of chicken-only farmers live at or beneath the poverty line. But how? It has to do with how the contracts between the corporation and the farmer are structured. While the farmers raise the chickens, they don't actually own them. The corporations give them to the farmers to raise and fatten for slaughter, then take them back to distribute. What do the farmers own? Everything else. And to own everything else, you have to buy everything else yourself with your own money. For example, the houses where chickens are kept, called broiler sheds, must be paid for and built by the farmer. Often, chicken companies will not give a farmer a contract unless he or she has several such expensive houses already. To afford the houses, farmers often have to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars and keep on buying new technologies to keep up with the competitive business. This amounts to a very large debt, some $5.2 billion for all contract growers in 2011. Now so dependent on chicken companies for money to pay off their debts and stay afloat, farmers must do what the company says, like discard all male chicks. This dependency and influence over the farmers makes them very afraid to try and speak out against the system for fear of retaliation. A survey found that 57.4% of chicken farmers feared retaliation from the companies who own their contracts if they spoke out. Those retaliations are a very real tool used to keep farmers in line. At its simplest, farmers can have their pay cut for speaking out. More complexly, their contractors can reduce the qualities of chicken that the farmers will receive. See, chickens are scaled from 1 to 10 in terms of quality. 1 is the best, 10 the worst. If farmers speak out against their chicken providers, they will see a decrease in 1s and an increase in 10s. Lower quality birds mean lower quality product, which means less money earned, etc., etc. So how could the average farmer, deep in debt, held in place by fear of going bankrupt, speak out against his or her only source of current and future income? How could they do anything but comply with whatever the contractor told them to do? In conclusion, I hope that you will understand the experience and perspective of farmers who comply with animal abusive practices, such as the sorting and killing of male chicks at birth. They already work in a corrupt, significantly unfair business, under significantly unfair contracts, with massive debt and threats of further hardship forcing their hands. As with most such problems, the real perpetrators of abuse, those who are the most to blame and also have the most power to change, are the leaders of the enormous corporations that run the chicken industry.